I just spent the last 30 minutes building a department budget variance report in Claude in Excel. And I wanted to talk you through exactly what happened, show you what worked, show you what didn't work, show you what I liked about it, show you maybe what I didn't like or where it got stuck, and give you a chance to see if this is something that you think is valuable for finance or FP&A teams like you're in. So if you don't know me, I'm Brett. I run a brand called Forecasting Performance. I've been doing FP&A finance work for the last 13 years in some of the largest and fastest growing companies in the world. So I've got a unique perspective on this, right? I'm not a consultant. I'm not trying to do this on the side. I'm like actually doing this day to day. Now, the example that I'm going to walk you through is with fake company data. Obviously, I'm not going to show or expose real company data, but I did create it in a way that actually makes it feel pretty real. And I think if you've worked in any sort of FP&A environment for a while, you're going to kind of understand and grab onto this pretty quick. So here's what I did. We're going to jump into a department budget variance report that I built. Well, I should say that Claude built in Excel. So if you're not familiar, Claude in Excel is a brand new feature. So this is a truly desktop version of Excel. And within it, you've only got to do a couple things in order to unlock Claude in Excel. And let's talk about why Claude in Excel versus Copilot or something else. So number one, Claude is just great right now. So Claude's reasoning skills are great. Claude's ability to do things is great. My opinion, it's one of the better AI tools that are out there when you compare against Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini. Now, each of them has their strengths, but Claude, from a general working sort of reasoning model and its ability to do tasks, I think just kind of like crushes all the others. So that's why Claude. So if you've got Copilot, you can do some of this stuff too, but I just don't think you're going to get the results. You're not going to be as happy. And it's that last 5% that I'm finding is the difference between being happy with AI working with you and not. Think about it like an employee. And that's frankly one of my biggest takeaways with this is if you think about AI as like a junior employee, I wouldn't even say intern, I would say like junior employee, you're paying like $20 a month. What are you getting? So if you're paying $20 a month and you're getting sloppy work, it's like, well, you're just not going to give them any more work. But if you're paying $20 a month and you're actually getting pretty decent work, you're going to give them more work. And I do feel like the difference between Copilot and Claude within Excel, it's like Claude is a better employee. I hate to say it that way, but that's how it feels. So if you don't have Claude, all you have to do is you can Google this. You just go to Claude or it's Anthropic's website, but it's the Claude AI tool, and you're just going to subscribe. It's the $20 a month plan, gets you access to Claude and Excel. Once you have that, you Google then Claude in Excel add-in, and it's going to pop up a link. You're going to add it to your add-ins within Excel. And so on my screen here, what you see is off to the far right, you've got a button that says Open Claude. So you're going to click that button. This sidebar opens up on the right, and you're going to click Login. That's it. And you're up and running. Honestly, 5 minutes. It took me 5 minutes. And I am not the tech guru that I would like to be. So the fact that I could do it in 5 minutes means you could probably do it faster. So now that we've got this sidebar up over here, if you've used anything like Copilot, ChatGPT, any of those, you're going to kind of recognize this. It's just a command prompt. So you're going to type in whatever you want it to do in here. So what I did separately, because I didn't want to use real company data, is I got a dummy data set of expense transactions by vendor, the description, the department, the date, the category. So it's a pretty clean expense file. And this is something that you'd see in a typical company. You might see more columns and more data and stuff like that. I forget how many rows I did. Only about 100 rows. So it's not a big data set. So there's maybe 2 questions that I still have outstanding. So as I'm just testing Claude and Excel, I think it worked really well. And I don't want to give you too much of the ending, but generally I think it worked really well. There's 2 questions though that I have outstanding. One is security, right? I'm not using real data, so I don't really care what I upload to Claude. But my question is, if you're uploading sensitive company data to Claude using Claude in Excel, how safe is it? I don't know the answer to that. I want to do more research into that because I got a fuzzy answer, I feel like. Number 2, how does it handle very large data sets? Again, this is only 100 rows of data. What about thousands? What about hundreds of thousands of rows of data? Can it handle that? Now, I did run something similar to this actually on my personal expenses. I downloaded all my credit card transactions for like 3 or 4 years, gave it to Claude in Excel because I've already got a budget model personally that I manage in Excel. I gave it to Claude and I said, tell me what I'm missing. and it ran through it and it did a really good job. So I'm confident it can do thousands of rows, but I don't know about hundreds of thousands of rows or millions of rows. Things that where Excel starts to cap out, will Claude do better? I don't know. So if you know, leave a comment. I would love to hear. But that's my 2 question marks right now. So back to this exercise. So what I did was I grabbed just dummy data here. All I had when I started was just a data tab. I did not have any of these other tabs. I entered a prompt into Claude and I said something very basic. I said something like, help me create a department budgeting worksheet where we've got a different tab for each of the departments and a budget is filled out. And that was it. I didn't tell it how to format it. I didn't tell it how to structure it except for the different tabs for each one. And I said, create a column for January actuals, February actuals, January budget, February budget, January forecast, February forecast, and then variances between actuals and budget and forecast and budget. So let me show you what it created. Now, before I go there, the tab formatting, that was Claude's decision. Not sure I would have picked that, but whatever. Again, it's a junior analyst. I'm paying $20 a month. If it colors the tabs weird, kind of okay with that. Okay, so let's jump in. We just jumped into the sales tab. This is the sales department budget. Again, this is all fake data, so it's a little bit thin, but what you have here is it did a pretty good job. So I'll zoom in a little bit. You've got January actuals, January budget, forecast actual versus budget, forecast versus budget, and then you've got February and it keeps going. Frankly, pretty good. You've got the different expense categories down here. And I checked this before and the numbers all ported over correctly. Here's a strange thing. When I asked it to pull in the actuals, it didn't write a formula. This is a bit of a red flag for me. It's not huge because it got it right. So again, junior analyst, I kind of don't care. Claude did it in like less than 5 minutes. It manually went and summed up, I guess. It ran like maybe a Python script or something over the actual raw data and then just populated each of these in. I don't like that from like a scalability standpoint and an error checking. It means I have to actually literally check each one of these. If I know that it used a formula and it like pulled down the formula and the formula looks good here and here, then I feel good about all of the data. The problem is it pulled in specifics and hard coded it. I feel like I have to check every number now. So I don't love that, but that's maybe more of a preference than it is anything. A point that I want to make here is like, and something that was funny was in the sidebar, it said, I checked my work. I spot checked my work and it looks good. And I was like, well, if I don't trust you to do the work, I probably don't trust you to check your work as well. So like, I appreciate you checking it, Claude, but like, I'm not going to not check it. So the key takeaway here for me is, and I keep referencing Claude as like a junior analyst. I think in the same way, you have to have oversight over what it does as if it was a junior analyst. So I think one of the things we're going to learn about Claude in Excel over time, even as it changes, it's going to have behaviors and patterns of the way it works. I think us as users of Claude and Excel ought to think about how it works and study how it works so then our oversight can adapt to it. So I think coming in, blank slate, I have no idea how it works and I'm learning and I have to check everything. But over time, I imagine I will learn that I have to check less and less, or I have to spot check certain things because it always kind of gets this wrong. So I digress. I don't know if that's where we're going, but I do think that that's kind of like how you have to think about Claude and Excel is like, it's like a junior employee. You don't know their tendencies. You're getting to learn them. And so you've got to study how it's working. So it populated everything correctly. I told it to just make me a standard budget, flatline it for the year. That's not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise was, could it make the report and could it populate it? Check. Yes, it did both of those. So I was actually really impressed. Within 5 minutes, it did that. It had a couple of quirky things that happened over in the chat box. It would like give me a sentence and then it would cut itself off. And then I don't know what it was saying. So I would just say yes. And it would like show me the rest of the prompt and then keep going. So a little buggy, but again, it's in beta version. So Claude in Excel is actually not technically rolled out in its final version. It's in beta version. So we're talking about the kind of the worst version that it's ever going to be. To me, that's forgivable. It wasn't a big deal. It didn't mess with anything. It did crash once. It kind of got stuck in its own little prompt. So I just had to turn it off and turn it back on, like shut down the Excel, reopen it, and then just keep going. And it was fine. So that happens though. Like if you're running Excel add-ins, if you're working in a big company with lots of data, Excel crashes. Like it's not abnormal. It would just happen to crash the first time I opened it. So not preferential, but whatever. Here we are. So Let me scan through. Each of these look great, different budgets. So what I really wanted to test within the department budget variance model sort of request is not about building models from scratch. To me, that's not a big deal. That's like, we don't build models from scratch a ton in FP&A, right? You have models you roll over from year to year. You just use models that are already there. You might tweak or update models, and that's fine. Maybe Claude could do a decent job. If it could build a model, it could probably update a model. Here's where I start to think about Claude and Excel as being a really high value, again, $20 a month asset for me. Is a department budget for me as a finance leader. Like, I just don't care how much sales spends in meals and entertainment. Now, I have to care by the nature of my role. I have to be the guardrail around expenses. And I do, and I care about expenses in total. But again, sales is specific meals and entertainment budget. I just personally don't care. But I need to report on it and make sure that they're not overspending, or if there's things that we're not picking up in that line item. Or more importantly, clearly by size, is software and tools. Do we have decent thoughts and governance around software and tools? I personally don't care that it's $5,390 versus a budget of $5,500. They're under budget. I couldn't care less. But I need to go have a conversation with the head of sales about their progress on their budget. So for me, the big unlock that I found here was when I asked Claude to do a variance analysis, or just help me understand what's going on in the spend of each of these categories. This is where it actually got really interesting for me. So I asked it, instead of creating a kind of a summary table where it shows me all the different departments on one table and the spend January versus February, I said, skip that. I don't want a summary table. I don't care. What I want are the insights, because I'm going to go talk to the head of sales. I just want a couple things that I'm going to talk about. So this is where it gets cool. It created this tab on its own. And I've sort of formatted it a little bit because I was trying to look at some things. But generally it looked like this. It created an executive summary tab. It created a little bit of a table up here. It wasn't formatted like this originally. And just shows a little bit of the trend of expenses, which is fine. Where it got really cool was it gave me my sales meeting talking points to go talk to the head of sales about. It numbered them 1 through 6. It told me what the trend was, the general trend that I should be talking to sales about. And then it gave me the specific details of exactly what it's looking at. So then if I wanted to, I could either go audit it, or if I'm talking to the head of sales, I could reference specific numbers, not just general thoughts. To be completely honest, if you take a step back and you think about it, it would take a human at least an hour. If I'm being super generous, an hour. If I'm being more realistic, a junior analyst maybe takes them a day to prep this kind of material. Think about it. This is like monthly transaction level expense detail. They're going to be looking at overall spend. Like this one's quick. You can do that really fast. But heavy tool stack. Let's just read through this. And I think this detail is important. Software and tools increased. It's telling me exactly which vendors, how much they are per month, are recurring. A new tool popped in, outreach.io, added in February. Okay, a few minutes for that. Great. But just like having the awareness of saying that's a heavy tool stack. Client dinner spend escalating. Average dinner, $329, all at high-end steakhouses. So this is where I get really excited actually about sort of the traditional machine learning AI sort of blending with this new generative AI. And I know it's not that black or white, but that's how my brain thinks about it. So that's how I want to convey it to you. Traditional machine learning will just tell you what's out of pattern. This generative AI layer on top of it will then sit there and go, oh, these are all high-end steakhouses. Like that's plain language for me. And they may say like, yeah, these are client dinners. These are all really important. These are some of our biggest deals. You know, $329 helps us to land $1 million in revenue. Okay, cool. That's a really good business conversation. But it says here, ask about the entertainment policy. That's just a prompt for me as an expense person to say, wait a minute, are these within entertainment policy guidelines? So you keep going here and you see lots of little nuggets that it's giving us. Here's a good one. Recruiting tools churning. That's item 5. January. It's talking about Indeed and LinkedIn, but then switched to ZipRecruiter in February, dropped LinkedIn. Are they actively hiring or just testing platforms? This is a really good thought, especially as you get into better and better forecasting. If you do driver-based forecasting around your expenses for things like Recruiting tools, you're going to go look at your headcount plan and say, are we expecting to hire somebody? What are we doing? Are we just testing? Are we actually hiring? Can we link these two forecasts together? So again, this, even just the way it's formatted, the way that these are different topics, like I could just screenshot this and send this to the head of sales and say, hey, looking forward to our meeting in an hour. Let's talk about these couple things. Curious if you have any thoughts. And then work together with them to update any sort of forecast inputs that they have for the rest of the year based on what we just talked about. Now, that, like I said, an hour, probably more for a junior analyst to do this. And then you do it by department. And I'm telling you, Claude did it in less than 5 minutes when I told it to do this, which is pretty impressive to me. Now think about even more transaction detail, even more complexity there. Here's the other thing that I ran into was it got to engineering and it said, we're out of tokens. So I ran out of Claude tokens. Now I can upgrade to the $100 a month tier. I'm not going to do that. This isn't real work. But if I'm really evaluating this as a investment, it would be well worth the $100 a month from a corporate standpoint. I would pay that 10 times over. But from a personal perspective, I'm like, I'm not going to pay that to do a sample thing. But it was really interesting to see. Based on what I showed you, I wouldn't have expected to hit my limits in one day. Like that's 1 day of work. And it said the limits were going to reset that day. So I built this yesterday at 7 p.m. So it was like I had to wait until effectively the next day to finish doing my work. It's not a great experience. Maybe I could have done something in settings that's different, but I sort of picked this up cold and wanted to test it cold. So from that, it was a little bit of a red flag, and I'm sure that's going to get worked out. I think based on the research that I'm doing, a lot of other people have the same issues, but that's where we're at. So that's sort of my concluding point. As I think about Claude and Excel, just with department budgeting, I would sit there and go in my head, instead of paying somebody a tenth or a quarter of their salary to do this work, I can have my junior analyst doing something else while I just run this process through Claude. Literally just have somebody export me the next month of data, add it to the bottom here, and then prompt Claude to fill out March in each of these tabs, fill out my new executive summary for March, and then give me my speaking points and go screenshot those and talk to the heads of the business. So I've effectively, once this is done, I've effectively cut out probably a tenth to a quarter of a head count. And this is where I think this gets interesting, because I think people are saying, oh, you can run Claude and Excel can run it can replace an entire team. I don't think it can replace an entire team. I think it can give you a 10 to 20% boost in efficiency, depending on how you use it. Now, I'm going to be looking at different use cases over time. Again, I don't think model building is the use case for FP&A. I think it's for routine updates on things where you need accuracy, you need detail, and you're looking at this kind of blend between traditional machine learning and generative AI that's creating this sort of variance analysis at levels that I feel comfortable allowing AI to do it. So I'm going to go deeper into this. If you want to follow along, obviously subscribe. I've got a newsletter called Forecasting Performance. You can subscribe to that as well. I'm just going to keep going deeper on this. Let's see what we find.